Imagine if each morning when you wake up, you're smiling and looking forward to your day, knowing you are happy even while you're dealing with grief and loss. The Grief and Happiness podcast inspires, comforts, and supports you with each new episode. I'm Emily Thoreau-Threat, welcoming you to explore with me your life of endless possibilities. Aloha. I'm so happy you joined us today. You're going to love this podcast. I have a wonderful guest today, Kevin Campbell, and he's quite a musician. He sent me his album that I have listened to several times since we got that, and I feel like I almost know him already just from listening to his music, and I want you to get the opportunity to get to meet him too. So, hi, Kevin. Can you tell us about you?
Hi, Emily. Thanks for having me. My name's Kevin Campbell. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, singer-songwriter. The reason I'm here today, I have a new album out. It's called The Stages. And the stages for me are the stages of grief, the stages of metamorphosis, the stages of life. I had a couple of years ago, I lost my girlfriend of 22 years. She died from heat stroke while hiking the Pacific Coast Trail on a unusually hot morning. And
wow.
And after that happened, I kind of was in a tailspin and just trying to get my life together and move forward and work and do all the things I was already doing and trying to keep my head in the game. And eventually I started getting a little bit of perspective and I wrote this album. And it's my journey through the stages of grief.
And that's quite wonderful. I love when people can have a creative outlet that can help so much, not only for you, but I think for other people who listen to your music too. I know I asked you ahead of time if we could play one of your songs or one of the cuts from the album and the podcast, and you said yes, and I'm very happy about that. And I kept listening to the songs and going, I don't know which one that I would suggest to you. So I thought I'd ask you to pick one, tell us which one it is, and we'll add the recording in when we edit it. So we won't play it right now, but we'll be able to, since I'm familiar with them from listening to them, we'll be able to talk about it. And maybe talk about the album. Is the order of the music on the album kind of the order of your process, what you dealt with, or?
In some ways, the very first song, Lost at Sea, I wrote 3 months after Melissa died. And I was still in shock and in the throes of grief. And that's what that song's about. And the last song, Cocoon, was the last song that I wrote for the album. And I had COVID. It was Christmas night. I got my dad sick with COVID. And I was just up really late, just trying to write this song. I was trying to find closure to the album and to show that I was starting to move forward, like starting to accept the loss, and that would be the song I would suggest that you play, Cocoon.
Okay.
Because like in that, the opening line is going to need more time to mourn old me, and it's like I made peace with, like, I'm different now than I was with her, and I made peace with that. My life will never be the same as it was with her, but something beautiful could come from this, like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. So the journey's there between that first song and the other one. The other ones, they kind of just came at different times over a 2-year period of me trying to work it out and figure everything out.
I'm glad you suggested Cocoon, because I really resonated with that one too. And it's interesting to hear the perspective of when you were writing it. That I know I wrote, not music, but the writing that I do, I wrote a lot during the pandemic because it was something I could do.
Yeah.
And it gave me an opportunity to explore a lot of thoughts and feelings. And I can see that in your music, that was what you were doing with this music too. I thought Cocoon was an interesting idea about this song. One of my chapters in one of my books is on cocooning. So when I saw cocoon, I thought, we've got something in common there, and in kind of the way that we think about things. Because with cocooning, as you know, it's a total metamorphosis from a caterpillar into a butterfly. And in the meantime, when they're in that cocoon, they turn into, oh no, I'm not going to be able to say the name of it. It's like an imaginal or imagine. It sounds like imagine, but that's part of the word, but it's not the whole word. And what it is like goo, with the transformation that they actually turn into that, and then out of that, the butterfly is able to emerge. And I thought that just sounds like grief to me, you know?
Yeah, I'd written all about grief, and then like towards the end of the process, I started realizing how much I changed, and I was like, I was writing about metamorphosis too. And then I was like, did I just come up with that? And I Googled it, and then there's like a million grief references. And I was like, okay, well, I came to where everybody else ended up eventually. And so then I had that in my head, the metamorphosis, and that was kind of like leading to that cocoon feeling and thinking about it. And I had lived in LA for 23 years. I met Melissa like 5 months after I moved there, and we were together 22 years. And I stayed there for 10 months after she died. And I was just like, I just can't, I don't think I can move forward as fast if I just stay here. So I decided to go to a city where I thought I could play a lot, go out and play a lot of music. I didn't know anybody in Raleigh. I just kind of picked it and went here. And I have 2 jobs, and both of my jobs were online. So I spent a lot of time at home or walking my dog in the park. And I just started looking at my townhouse as kind of like this cocoon, because I was just sitting there working on me. Like I was journaling every day. I was meditating. And I was just grieving because I was like all alone, and it really hit me here the most. And that's where most of the songs came when after I had moved here. So
that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about it that much before, but those of us who had that kind of timeline where my husband died not too long before the pandemic, and so you just, everybody's in a different place after they suffer a loss like that. But to have that and then to not be able to connect with people, it was tough.
Yeah. I had trouble being around people that I knew because they were all looking at me like I was an alien. It was kind of like they were always checking on me and always giving me like that extra look to see if I was like okay. And I didn't like that kind of attention, and I didn't like getting advice from people about like, how, just give it time and your blessings. Like, I didn't like any of that. That became that song Better Now. It was all too much for me. I just wanted to go somewhere where no one knew what happened to me. And when I talked to them, they just talked to me about whatever they wanted to talk about, and not like about my grief. I just kind of wanted to handle my grief alone unless I wanted to talk to somebody I was close with about it, and so moving kind of helped me. I feel like accept it faster.
And are you comfortable there now? Is this where you're going to stay, or what's your plans?
I don't know if I'll die here, but I'm still going to give it a go. I'm like 4 hours away from my dad and my sister now. So instead of being all the way across country, I'm just like a 4-hour drive. So that's a little bit better for me. And I grew up in Northern Virginia, so it's kind of close to being home.
Yeah. Did you find that the opportunities you were looking for once the pandemic was over, so that you got to play a lot, or
I did
play a lot?
I moved here and hit the ground running and played a lot last year, and it gave me something else to focus on, besides just like feeling sorry for myself, and gave me like a new purpose, and then made me realize like I can like still find joy amongst all of this stuff.
Oh, that's what it's all about. I know after Ron died, I was looking for my purpose, because up until that point, my whole life had been focused on one thing or another. And since the last 2 years, especially since we moved to Maui, where he'd lived here a long time before I did, and he wanted to come here because it was where he felt most comfortable. So that's what we did. And then I thought, okay, now what do I do? Everything that I know, all the jobs, all the connections and everything were on the mainland. And I just kind of had to figure things out. So I actually kind of moved to a new place too. And in a way, it's really good, because people here don't necessarily know my history. They don't look at me and go, oh, she's a widow, and say all those things that you were mentioning that people say that I wish they wouldn't.
I mean, for the most part, people are great. They're either avoiding you or they're checking up on you like a million times. But it's all done with love. I feel like I didn't feel angry about any of that kind of thing. I felt like I would not have moved forward as quick.
Mm-hmm.
I was really focused on just trying to stabilize my life and get back to some kind of normalcy as much as possible,
Yeah, that's really kind of how it is. I'm always having people tell me things that somebody said to them that just didn't work for them. And I've been kind of keeping track of things like, aren't you over that yet? Or or you can get married again, or those things don't help. Can you think of anything people said to you that you'd rather they didn't?
She died doing what she loved, like that kind of stuff. And just the time thing is like you tell somebody when they're like in the midst of it all that with time it'll be better. And of course you realize that, but like there's so many steps to getting better. And I was instantly aware of it. I remember after I found out she died, I called her best friend right away. And I remember in the phone conversation, I was like, oh, these next 2 years are going to be like hell, isn't it? This next 2 years are going to be incredibly hard. I remember saying it to her. Like, I just looked at it like that. I was like, because my mom died, I knew how long it took me to like kind of like feel normal. I did not want to go through it. I just knew it was going to be a lot of work and a lot of grief and a lot of sadness and a lot of change. And I don't like change. And that's why I wrote that in that song. It's like, I'd rather just let everything be how it was, even though I know that's not how it goes.
Yeah. Wow. It's so interesting that thought of them telling you that she died doing what she loved. It's like, that's not the way it was supposed to turn out. So that's not helpful.
No, yeah, really, it really isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really made me think twice about what I say to someone and make sure that I don't say the things that bothered me. And I know that it was done with kindness. It was done with love. They weren't trying to hurt me. It just was, it's like I couldn't stand it when somebody said, I'm sorry for your loss. Because to me, that was like saying, have a nice day. And yeah, right.
That and any advice that they would give, it was like, you're going home to your husband. Don't give me advice. You have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
When you leave, that was like the hardest part for me. But I don't know. There's no real handbook to this that people are going to read before grief happens to them. And I found like as soon as like Melissa died, in the next 3 months, the people that reached out to me had all lost their husbands, they lost their sons, and there were people that had been touched by grief, and they were just trying to ease it for me. They weren't giving advice; they were just checking in. They were talking to me. They were recommending books and different stuff, and then. And the people that really hadn't been touched by like death by anybody that was close to them, they just kind of stayed away until I was ready to approach them, I think.
That's a really good point, that those of us who have been in that situation know how good it feels for somebody to just care. Yeah. And I don't need advice for them. I just need to be visible to them, because I felt like I was getting invisible to other people who hadn't dealt with loss, because they didn't know what to say or how to act. I know when Jacques, I've had 2 husbands die, and when Jacques died, he had so many friends in the community where we lived. And when he first got sick, they were all over the place. It was hard for me to get time with him because everybody else wanted time with him. Yeah. And the longer he was sick, the further away they stayed. It's like they expressed what they were going to, and then they didn't know what to say after that.
Yeah, I found that up until the memorial, everybody's great, everybody's there. And then the moment the memorial's over, they were scared to talk about her again. And I used to be bothered by it. I'd be like, we used to go to your house all the time for dinner. How come you cannot say Melissa's name?
Yeah.
I just know with me, if I had died first, I wouldn't want her to all of a sudden just stop talking about me forever and forget about me. And, Not that anybody would forget about it, but should be able to still talk to the friends that we hung out with about her, but people just aren't comfortable with it.
That's one thing that when people ask me what's a good thing to say to somebody, what are they going to accept? And I always say their loved one's name, say
Yeah.
something positive about them, say, oh, I remember when we did this, or she was so cool at doing that. That always makes me feel good when somebody mentions that my loved ones.
Yeah. I think they think we're going to spiral by hearing their name, but like, that's all we do is think about them, like your whole life changes, your bills double, all your chores double, like everything, you can't forget about it. So when someone's remembering something good, it's like, oh yeah, that's great. That's a good memory. Yeah. Like it's never been a bad thing if anybody ever brought her up to me.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. And I hope people remember that when they want to say something
Yeah.
to somebody is to say that. Another thing they used to say to me all the time was, how are you doing? And I thought, well, that's nice that you're asking, but what do you want me to say to you? And I finally started saying, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. I would just give people the real answers that first year. I'm like, yeah, it's been really hard. I've been like, and I'll just say it. And there'll be a little flinch for some people because I don't think they were expecting me to go that deep. But I just refused to like not talk about it for that first year. Like if someone asked me, I told them how I felt. I just didn't avoid it. It didn't help me.
It's so good to talk to somebody. And I think that's why I like facilitating the groups that I do now, that it's everybody's got something in common there. And we can all talk from our heart. And it just feels good that you don't worry about stepping on anyone's toes or upsetting anybody or them upsetting you. That's one thing that I thought was funny, that somebody would say that they were concerned about mentioning the loved one's name because it was going to remind them of what was going on. I said, they don't need a reminder.
No, not at all.
It never goes away.
Never does. It never does. I mean, you definitely learn to live with it. And I thought Melissa was like the whole book, I thought I was gonna know her my whole life. And it just turned out she was like a good chunk of the book, and I'm still here. I know that she wants me to be happy, and I know that she wants me to like keep trying, not to regress, and just, that's one of the main reasons why I finished the album, because I didn't want to write it. I was like, no one wants to hear these sad songs. And like, I don't want to get up in front of people and sing these sad songs. And that's what I thought. But I had written so many songs about our love life and our fights and all the other stuff on other albums and stuff that I just felt like, how could I just skip this and get to a point where I can write about other things and not address this, And then also in another way, like all the people that have reached out to me and did all this stuff, this is kind of my way of paying it forward. So if like you're going through it and you can sit there and listen to it and be like, oh, that's how I feel, or like the song makes me feel better. Like, especially like that song I wrote, Baby, We Made It, everybody has death to its part as their goal, and then when that actually happens, you're going to be sad. But like at some point you got to celebrate the fact that like, that's the only thing that can break you up, and that was kind of the perspective I got with time.
Well, the death to his part, that was one of the things that got me, because when my first husband died, after that, I didn't feel like I wasn't married anymore. We didn't get divorced. We didn't have a big argument. We didn't have an ending to our relationship. And it was a challenge for me to move forward. It's like, what do you do? Because you can't continue the way you were because it's not possible.
Yeah.
So what do you do now?
Yeah. And I can always look back at this album as like the love I had for her, our relationship, how proud of it I was, how wrecked I was. And then I can see like the light in that album of me like coming out of that and starting to live again but at the same time, like, wishing us well,
Yeah.
who we,
Yeah, I really experienced a sweetness from you in the album. It was, I could, the pain is kind of obvious, but it's not the kind that makes everybody else, just fall apart with pain when they listen. Sometimes people say things like, "It's, oh my gosh, I could have gone my whole lifetime without hearing that." But it was a make you think sort of a thing that I really liked. I was relating it to my relationships, and I thought it's so nice to have somebody in music to just bring this out.
Yeah. I really tried to have like, of course the lyrics you're missing them and there's pain and all that, but I also tried to like find different moments that I was aware of as it was happening, like I would go to bed every night and go, come see me in my dreams, baby, come see me in my dreams, and then the first time I actually had a dream about her, like I was like, you're supposed to be dead. What are you doing? Why are you calling here? and then like after like a long time talking to her, I like finally was convinced she was there, and then I woke up and it was just
wow.
and it was just felt like it happened all over again. And that's what like Get to See You Again was about, And like I said, like better now is just like all the advice people were giving me is, yeah, I was like, yeah, that doesn't make it better now. I was like, it was just like another, like a way of me showing like these steps that I was going through, Good to feel bad sometimes. I had written part of that first verse a week before she died, and she was a photographer and she was in her office editing. And I went in there with a guitar and I go, hey, check this out. I have this idea. I'm going to say bad a lot in the verse. I'm going to say good a lot in the chorus. And I started playing part of the first verse and she didn't turn around. She was just like, keep working on it. Because when you first start off, it always sounds rougher than when it ends. And then I went back to it after she died, and the chorus is all about her, and the rest of the verses is about her, And I like the fact that she heard part of it, and I put that on the album. My song Every Time I had written that as a love song in probably like 2008, 2009, but it felt generic, so I never put it on any album. But I like the Every Time That I Find line, and I like the chords, so I went back and rewrote it, and I know that she's heard part of that too. So like, there's these little things I did for me on this album, and I hired a new producer I hadn't used before, and because I heard some of the other work that he did, and I really liked what he did, and I told him I don't, once it was such a big spirit, I wanted this music to have like that spirit too, and wanted it to sound like something you want to listen to again, even though the topics were heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like he did that for me, brought in all those musicians and he guided it, and I'm like really happy with how the album came out.
It's beautiful. It really is.
Thank you.
I like how you said that you were doing something for you with the album, because that's what I always tell people when somebody says, what can I do? What should I do? I don't like that should word, but what is it? Give me some advice. I don't know where to go from now. And I always tell them the first thing to do is to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And they find a way to do that, whatever it is. And you found such a beautiful way to do that.
I feel like this is the first time that I've ever achieved that for myself. This is like my 6th album, and all the other albums I'd be in the studio like, oh, wait till people hear this, when they hear this. And then this one, like, I didn't have that feeling. I was just like, that's how I wanted it to sound. Oh, that makes me feel this. And, and then when I put it out and I started getting responses, I was like, oh, that's great. I didn't expect that. Like, it's really the first time for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat too, that it is the first time that you got to experience that. That's so special.
Yeah.
It really is. Wow. So what are your plans now? What's happening?
I don't even know. The album's over. I don't know. I'm the kind of songwriter that like will just kind of sit on the couch with the guitar and just kind of noodle, and then all of a sudden something will sound good to me, and then I'll lead to like lyrics, and I'll just chase the idea. And then when it's all done, the song's over. I'm like, oh, that's what I was thinking right now. Okay, that's what I've been going through. That made sense. So I really don't know until a song comes, like how I'm feeling. And then I start seeing a group of songs kind of having a same kind of message. And then I'm like, oh, I can make a theme out of this. So I have no idea what's in my head right at this point, because I just finished wrapping up this album and it's out. So I'm just going to try to live. I'm about to travel. I'm about turning 50 in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to Portugal for my birthday.
Oh, cool.
So I'm just trying to like just do some things for myself and working, going to see family over Thanksgiving, and just, and then hopefully some songs come out of the experiences.
I bet they will. I took two big trips about a year apart, not too long after Ron died, just because I wanted to do something and something for me where I wouldn't be around anybody that's going, oh, poor you, or the things that people have a tendency to, they might not say it, but you feel it. Mm-hmm. And I was able to go, I went to Tuscany on the first trip and to Bali on the second trip. And both of them I went with an organization of ceramic artists. And that way there were people there. I didn't know any of them, but we had something in common that wasn't grief or death or that sort of a thing. Right. So we could talk about things. We went to classes together. We saw exhibits together. So we were really exploring something of common interests to us. And it made it a good way to travel by myself, because although I was by myself, I wasn't really, because there were these other people around.
It sounds great. It sounds amazing.
It was, both trips were truly amazing. And I'm so glad I did them. They were both things that I had planned on doing sometime with one of my loved ones. And it just never happened. We did other things, but those two trips in particular didn't happen. The one to Tuscany that kind of blew me away was I get the magazine from the ceramics people every month, and they have ads in the back with different classes and different shows you can apply for and all that sort of thing. And I kept seeing the same one for this ceramics studio that was in Tuscany, where you could go and have like a residency and stay there for a while and work on stuff. And I just thought, I would love to go to that place. And I kept trying to figure out how I could do it. And I finally decided I'm not that hot of a ceramist. I've been in shows and sold my work and stuff, but a lot of people do a lot more things than I do. And so I kind of put it on the back burner, but it was always kind of there in my head. And I signed up for this trip. And when I got the itinerary and it said where we were going to go, one of the places we went to study was that studio.
Oh, crazy.
So it kind of blew me away. I thought I was knowing it all along that this was going to be part of my life. I just didn't realize how.
Put it out in the universe.
Mm-hmm. That's it, is being able to think what would be nice or to say yes. That's one of my big deals is if somebody invites me to do something, I used to kind of knee-jerk no, because I was always busy. I was always doing so many different things. I didn't have time to add anything else to my plate. And I got to the point when I was by myself, I thought, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to say yes and see what happens. And boy, I had wonderful opportunities because of that.
That happened to me. I was a big no person with when Melissa was around. I just kind of pick and choose the things that I wanted to do. She'd always want to go hiking. I'd be like, no, I don't want to go hiking. And she always wanted to go swing dancing, and I never wanted to go swing dancing. And after she died, I just why wouldn't you go swing dancing with her just one time? Just why didn't you give her that? And I was just so upset at myself about that. And then I didn't want to be I didn't want to be bothered after, she died, but I also didn't want to be alone because I felt like if I just stayed alone, I would just end up alone. I would just, because I said no so many times before she died. If I did it after she died, then all my friends would eventually just kind of abandon me and just leave me alone So I just started saying yes to stuff. Dinner parties, you want to come walk my dog with me? Come on, And then I started realizing I don't mind doing these things, I'm actually, having a good time being out of the house and doing things like that. So now I pretty much do a lot of stuff, a lot more stuff than I did. And there's a lot of talking to the universe, I'm going on a hike right now. I'm sorry, I didn't go on a hike, but I'm open to it now, thanks to you, that kind of talking.
That's so good. I'm so happy to hear you say that because I think that just makes all the difference in the world. And I can see that you're happy that you're having good experiences. And I think a lot of times people think they're never going to be happy again. And if they can see those of us who have gone before be able to be genuinely happy, then that's a great inspiration to them.
Yeah. My dad was a good role model too, because, he lost my mom and I just saw him. They always say how you find meaning through loss, and I was really close with my mom and I would always just say, tell dad this, tell dad that. And she would your dad says this. And, we always talk to my mom. And then after she passed, like I kept checking in on him to see if he was okay. And then our relationship got really strong over like the last like 10 years. Like we talk all the time. And I don't know if my mom is still alive, but we had this relationship that we have, so, but he was like talking to me a lot in the early days, like about what he went through after my mom died, and I never heard him talk about that even after she died, and that helped me know that I would be all right eventually one day.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful to have that kind of example too.
Yeah.
I know my parents died a long time ago, and so I've always kind of wished that I had a mother figure or father figure or somebody that I could talk to and lean on like that. That would be that's really wonderful that you got to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Thankful.
Yeah. There's so much to be grateful for now. I know that gratitude has been a big thing for me. That's something that I never thought of before, because I thought, what do I have to be grateful for? My husband's died, But when I stopped looking at it that way.
I had a friend send me a journal at the beginning of 2022. And it had like, it's called the 5-minute journal. And you write it in the morning and you write in the afternoon. And they have this prompt. So it's like, write 3 things you're grateful for every day. And then like 3 things you would like to happen today. And then like write 2 mantras for yourself. And at the end of the day, it was like 3 things that happened today that you were happy about. And then 2 things that could have made it better. And I just started doing it. I did it every day for 2022. And I just started writing like, oh, this person checked in on me today. And like, I was just like noticing all these little small things that like made my day. And then I could like in September, I could look back at like February and January and see like how dark it was and like all the things that I was like happy about that day. And I could see me piecing my life together through that book, It definitely was one of the major points of my advancement, and through this grief and being able to like feel good about life again.
That's beautiful. I really wholeheartedly recommend writing in journals. I write in my journal every day. And I write things like what I'm grateful for, but I've got a whole pattern of things that I do. And I close it out every day with writing down something that brought me joy the day before. And sometimes I have to think about it, but most of the time I'm realizing that there's something that it's kind of beyond happy, something that really brought me joy the day before. And it feels so good. And if I ever start to get down, I can just flip through and go, oh, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And life's not so bad, Yeah.
I would write down stuff like I cleaned the place today, like I would never think about joy of cleaning the place. I'd like be something I'd bitch about, like, it's cleaned all day, but like I started like looking at that as something like, hey, I'm taking care of myself, and this is part of it.
Yeah, and it feels so good to live in a clean place, that you didn't really think of it that way before, but now you can see the beauty in that.
Yep, definitely.
That is so wonderful. Well, I have enjoyed talking to you so much, and I'm sure our listeners will too. And we will put in the show notes the name of the album, and I guess you can get it any place you get albums. Is that right?
Wherever you stream. And also KevinCampbellMusic.com.
Okay, we'll put those in the show notes so that you'll have access to them, because you'll want to have this album. I always recommend using music when you're dealing with things like this. There's so many kinds of music that does so many different things for you. Like my husband, Jacques, loved Baroque music, especially Bach. And so I listen to that and think of him. And my husband, Ron, loved jazz. And that was, the opposite. And I kind of like everything in between. So I like lots of kinds of music. And I love to go to concerts, especially to go see people perform. As a musician, you might find this kind of strange, but when I go to a concert, I like to sit someplace where I can actually look closely at the musician. I can make eye contact, if possible, with the person who's performing, and I'll smile. And I just want them to know that somebody is truly enjoying them, truly listening to what they're doing. And I love the response I get from musicians when you do that. I think a lot of times people aren't there. Yeah.
We're happy to have somebody looking at us or like singing the lyrics or something, as opposed to they're talking. And when you get done with the song, they're still talking, no clapping or anything. Just to have that connection, you're like,
Yeah, it's so good. I just think it's so important. I used to have a live theater, and one of the things that I liked to do when we didn't have a play running was to have different musicians come in, because the people would sit in the audience and look at them and they could really interact with the audience and enjoy the performance with the audience. And they were always saying, I'll come down there anytime, because it's so nice to have somebody pay attention.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a little clue to all of you out there. When you go see live music, make sure that the performers know you appreciate them. So, well, thank you so much for being here today. And I just wish you all the best. And I have a wonderful trip for your birthday. I think that's great that you're doing that. My stepson and his wife are in Portugal right now. They went over there just because they always wanted to see it and experience it and be there. And
this is a bucket list trip. This is definitely a bucket list trip for me. I've always wanted to go.
That's really cool. Really, really cool. I'm glad you're doing it. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm grateful to have you, and I'd love to stay in touch with you, and I'll be sharing your music even more and letting people know how cool it is. So thank you, and I'll see all our listeners again next week. Thanks for being here. Do you want more comfort, support, and happiness? Join the Grief and Happiness Alliance. Visit my website at lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com and read my book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, rate it, review it, and binge on all our episodes on grief and happiness. I can't wait to welcome you back to another episode